when people come to us, they're trying to get to the bottom of some of the problems and issues that really plague their life, whether that be on an emotional scale or a mental scale or even on a physical scale. Because it's once in the physical that we start to really look at the issues, because it's causing us in some way, some pain. So what happens with information is that it has a unified field that it sits in. And in the teachings of Guru Grabavoy, we start to look at how we master becoming the creators and how we work with the elements of creation. So it was about 7 years ago that we had access to TimeWaver, which is a quantum technology that can take a snapshot of what's happening in your biosphere on multiple levels. And what it does then is pieces together those different elements that may be absolutely causing you some angst in the physical present moment. And so when I go through TimeWaver reports, I can see there are 2 or 3 key topics that are affecting multiple levels that will be affecting you here and now. And so when I go through TimeWaver, I understand that information comes through as light that comes into our consciousness that we perceive as energy, either mentally, emotionally, chemically, and physically. And physically is the last level. Often, many of us try to intervene on the other levels to sort out the issue, but sometimes we don't actually understand why we still have repeated patterns in our life. We bring through 6 generations of our family's stuff to work on. So your mother's side and your father's side. So what I'd like to do today is to give you a snapshot of what happens when I work with people in discovering how they can start to restore things. Now, the beauty of TimeWaver being a quantum technology in Germany, it then has a look at what's happening in your biofield. And out of the 10,000 programs that it has in the master computer, then in the quantum computer, then it looks at what particular corrections you need, and then absolutely helps to pulse the frequency of the correction back into your biofield so that it affects you on multiple levels. So I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into what happens when I go through someone's TimeWaver program, where I go through and explain to them what's happening. And mostly when I do, people have got a fair idea anyway, but they just unconsciously have not put the pieces together. And this really helps to put the pieces together. So the first report I get is the aura report, and this is a sample report I'm taking you through. So anything that we consider is imbalance, in the middle is usually somewhere either negative or positive up to 20, but anything over that is considered that there is an issue in this area. So we can see on this report that in the crown chakra, there's some information that's being processed, and it's a little out of balance. The forehead ajna is in balance, so is the throat chakra, the heart, the solar plexus, and the sacral. But I can see from here the root chakra is processing some information from the past. Now, why we talk about this chakra coherence is because it will have a mirroring effect actually in the main report. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time. On the bottom of this report is your chakra energy. So if each chakra has the potential of 100% of energy, this lets you know what each chakra is working on. And then at the end here, it totals it up and gives it a general amount that you're working on. So in this case, 69% of all available chakra energy. If you'd like to know more about chakras and more in depth, there is some further reading at the bottom of this particular report. So you'll see on the top corner that it has golden matrix report, and this has some of the Grabavoy number codes under here, and I'll talk about that in other videos. But here it starts to where TimeWaver looks at headings and starts to show you pathways to understanding deeply what's happening into you. Now, I want to point out this graph because it's quite significant. And first I'll explain this. So anything that is not in harmony in your inner world, you now project into the outer world, and it's played out with people and situations for you to bring it into harmony. So your inner stuff is projected into the outer world for you to really get a handle on. And when we go through a report, it scales things from 1 to 10, and we're only going to look at anything that is a 7, 8, 9, or 10, because this will be really in your field, right in your face, and quite intense for you to harmonize. So INT stands for intensity, and the rest is about what level it is and also the potency of the corrections, etc. So here we have a 10, and this is called balancing polarities. And at the moment, this person was balancing outrageous to modest. So in their mind, they're mentally back and forth between the two. And then the other one was limp or strong. So this tells me it was still on the spiritual level LM. The next heading is block convictions. And this is where you believe that this is absolutely true and nobody can sway you. There's nothing there really to focus on, but I will just mention it so you understand. Under block convictions, it has a pathway. So it's telling me which areas. So it's saying it's on the psychological level. And this is a correction. It's I let go of my inner virtue by virtue of divine love, dissolving of blocked convictions. I have to get back what I gave to others. This is where somebody who feels like they always need to pay back things. If you give them a gift, they're not able to receive. The other one is dissolving emotional blockages. Here's a 10 again, the same pathway. It's on the psychological area, dissolving itself in the light of love and finding healing, resolution of emotional blockages. I am sad because I can't protect myself. So this is once again still working on the spiritual level. And then we go through headings such as letting go. And this person, again, on a psychological level, I had trouble letting go. I let go of my fears of disgrace. So it's quite strong. It's a 10 here in intensity. So when I give a debrief, when I record a debrief, I always ask the person, where is this showing up in your life at the moment? The next one's motivation. So we're starting to see, so the same sort of pathways, seeing through the patterns, disheartedness or the goal or the defeat. So once again, very strong. And so once again, so how's that playing out for you? And this is about overcoming self-refusal. So you'll sometimes find that you'll have different headings with different information, but this is generally the same. And it's telling me there's a karmic, so it's telling me it's from the past, and it's telling me it's stored as a karmic burden, and resolving of my karmic burdens in my taste. So what's happening, something in the mouth. So it's a 9. And this is what happens also. Next heading is prenatal, what comes in. So karmic and systemic again. So from the past, this is an affirmation, and it says reconciliation with the birth family. Dear Dad, I may remain. So there is some things with the birth family as well. So other one, again, another heading, problems and challenges. This person at the moment, again, psychological level. I grow into my utter entirety by developing and harmonizing my personal qualities and genius. So somewhere they're not acknowledging their genius. Next one is right at the moment, what life topics they are working on, because we often have different life topics as we go through. I'll just mention here, being convicted without being guilty. So feeling like they've done something wrong. So that's a topic in the heat of passion, and getting cursed and bewitched. So they're quite common, believe it or not, oaths and pledges and curses. And, a curse is as simple as, I wish you were dead. And in this current times, I'm sure there's a few people who have been saying that to our politicians. All right, traumas. So we start to see again on the psychological level, traumatic experiences, emotional. So this is the healing of the trauma, emotional trauma, it's 10. So once again, what's playing out at the moment that would be called happening. Wrong doctrines, this is where you've been programmed. People can trust me. I get old and be loved. I can get old and be loved. So lots of corrections in here, and then tells me on the bacterial level what's happening in the body, and I start to see, you know, where that can affect on different areas. Tells me how the body's detoxifying and from what it's detoxifying. And then it has corrections such as flower essences or healing crystals. And when I go through that and I read the correction, I can start to pick up the things that need to that have a pattern. It'll be repeated 2 or 3 times on different levels. So when, for instance, I read through the crystal, I can see it's working on creating sexuality, help to communicate with others, your own needs, helps the heart and liver. So when I go through, I start to see a bit of a pattern. Here's some of the Grabavoy tools and plant medicine that we work through. That's a correction. Shula tissue salts, again, is a correction. And so these are all corrections here. What is being pulsed back into the person's biofield? Now, I wanted to mention biological conflicts. This comes from German New Medicine, Dr. Hammer, where he was able to research, because he was working with cancer patients, the biological conflicts that happen in the brain. So I'll give you an example. Dr. Hammer, son had cancer, died very quickly. And this was a shock for Dr. Hammer. And so what that created in that moment, there was a shock of the sudden death, that it created a conflict. So what that means is you perceive something in the outer world and it creates a conflict in the brain that then has a corresponding in the body. So I'll give you an example here. So we see that it's psychological level and it's psychosomatic. So we caused it through our perception, and everybody has a different perception. So for instance, we could all see the same situation happen and react in a total different way. So this is stored in the cerebellum in the brain, and it's attacked towards the chest interior, feeling like you've been stabbed or punched in the metaphorical sense. So for instance, you have a lung tumor. We must open your chest up. Now, often people that have had a diagnosis with a cancer, once they get the diagnosis and the doctor tells them they've only got a certain time to live, or this may not be operable in some way, what happens is a second biological conflict is set up, whereas they have what is called a death fright conflict, where they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to live. And so this is where it sets up a secondary area. So you still have a biological conflict starting somewhere in the brain, but then it comes into the lungs. And this is what the medical model calls metastasize, and that's not quite right. So the meditation tells you how to correct it, but it then tells you exactly where it is in the body. So it's saying it's on the left side of the cerebellum in the pleura, and it's telling you exactly where it is, and the right pleura, so around the thoracic space, the vesicular pleura, the coating of the lung lobe. So it's in the lung, and so it has a correction underneath that. So biological conflicts, as I said, when it's very strong, you can see. So this one, again, another attack to the chest. So there's really something happening around the lungs. So I would go into that for the person. So that we go on, it says body functions. So how the body, so there's something happening in the teeth. And we could see that from previously, insulin. So we go through and it tells us what foods not to eat at the moment. And generally, if you've never heard of it, such as this one, you've probably never eaten it. Some medical plans again for the corrections. And this is where I again look through intestinal inflammation, liver issues. There's second time livers there. And I start to go through in peace, together the patterns that are showing in the TimeWaver report that then I can help sort out with the person and help to give them some direction on how to move through this. Because even though TimeWaver gives you the analysis of what's happening and it places you on corrections for 4 weeks where you're receiving that frequency, if you've studied other things such as people in our community who've studied Grigori Grabovoi, this is like a menu of how they can get to the bottom of the issues. So here's some more corrections. When you see a correction like this, it's because the reverse is playing. So I can have and use all the knowledge that helps me along without it hiding from my knowledge is not important for me. But that's because the reverse is actually playing. Again, some more corrections in homeopathics that I go through. Psychosomatic things that I also go through and look at some themes. And then we move down to some other transforming life themes. So feeling tragically in love and being abandoned. So not just physically, emotionally, mentally. So acquired patterns, what's come from ancestors, family relationships, parents. We've all got stuff with parents still. And then these are corrections that are moving through. And we can see there's some foreign energies and curses that are there. So that's been worked on. And that's really then the end of the report. So what happens then is that I go through the reports, come to the 2 or 3 things that seem to be playing out on multiple levels to really hone in on the issue. And then I do a debrief, and then you get a debrief of what's happening. So I love working with TimeWaver. They have a home product called Healy, but this really for us in our work with people really helps us to hone in on what's happening in your biofield, but in the unified field that we are all in and we get affected by, and then help to really debrief what's happening in your perception, in your thinking, and then how to resolve that. So I hope this gives you a sneak preview into TimeWaver. And I love working with people with this. So if you want to know a little bit more, you'd love to book a session and have a TimeWaver report done for you, and also a debrief from me, and then be on the corrections for 4 weeks, you can just jump onto our website into a store area and you'll find the TimeWaver link there. And so I'll drop that into the information below, and I hope to see you at some stage and go through your TimeWaver to help to sort out the issues that are causing you currently problems.